Woo, I'm freezing.
I have makeup on today.
Like, I need to go get a sweatshirt. I'm so cold.
It is very chilly here.
I'll be right back. I gotta go get a sweatshirt.
It is chilly here in Colorado. For sure.
Oh God, I'm like stuck in my sweatshirt. Oh, okay.
Hi, Ankila.
Hi.
We're actually live, but we have not started discussing yet. So this is going to be, I feel like, an interesting conversation today because we're talking about the Department of Justice lawsuit against the National Association of Realtors. It's intense stuff for sure. Just making sure that we're live and working. Someone want to check Facebook? I'm checking.
Please.
I don't know if Instagram's working. Oh, because I can't look at it from my own.
Yes, we are live on Facebook. Let me check the gram.
While we wait for people to jump on anyways.
No, we're not live on the gram.
Not live on the gram.
But why?
Facebook.
But why? Let me see.
How do we go live on the talk is really where we need to figure it out.
I don't know if you can do that.
On TikTok, everybody goes live on TikTok, and they have like 40,000 people on.
Oh, well, I guess we'll have to figure out how to do that. That's interesting. Hang on, let me mess with this for a second.
I was listening to the radio of all things yesterday. I know it's weird to listen to the radio, but they were referring to, I think, us and those older than us as olds. I'm like, what? They're like, well, the olds are interested in what's going on with technology too. I'm like, what? The olds?
The olds? We're just the olds?
Yeah.
That's rude. My Botox fails would like to argue that point.
That's mad. It's mad about that.
We are live on Instagram. Okay, so today we are talking about the Department of Justice lawsuit against the National Association of Realtors. This is a big deal. Before we launch this conversation, part of the reason why, in my opinion, this lawsuit is happening in the first place is price fixing on real estate commissions. It is against the Sherman Antitrust Act law to speak about real estate commission percentages as standard. So we're going to be really careful as we talk through this to not talk about standard real estate commissions or percentages or any of that jazz. So this actually started in 2005, which is really interesting, when the Justice Department filed a lawsuit against NAR, which is National Association of Realtors, alleging that NAR's rules limited competition from real estate brokers who use the internet to serve their customers, because brokers were limiting how many listings people were able to look at online. So like essentially brokerages were not syndicating all of their listings. They reached a settlement about that in 2008. NAR made some changes online, but what's interesting is that like this has been going on for a while. So it's like the DOJ has been kind of coming after real estate for a while. In July, DOJ pulled back on a settlement with NAR about this and decided to continue to investigate. And so basically what they're interested in now is antitrust, meaning that the Department of Justice feels that real estate in the United States is unusual in that there is a standard fee associated with buying and selling real estate, and they believe that we're the only country in the entire world in which one party is essentially responsible for all of the real estate commissions, the sellers. And so what they want is to make real estate commissions, the dollar amount, more visible to the public so that the public is very aware of what real estate agents on both sides of the transaction are being paid. And they also feel as if one party should not be responsible for paying all of the real estate commissions. Do you think I paraphrased that okay? Do you guys want to add anything to that?
No, I think you hit it and you summed it up very nicely.
Yeah, here's a statement regarding this from the Assistant Attorney General of the Justice Department's Antitrust Division. Buying a home is one of life's biggest and most important financial situations. Home buyers and sellers should be aware of all of the broker fees they are paying. Today's settlement prevents traditional brokers from impeding competition, including by internet-based methods of home buying and selling, providing greater transparency to customers about broker fees. This ruling would increase price competition among brokers and lead to better quality of service for American home buyers and sellers. It's interesting. I mean, it's funny to me. I feel like half of the real estate population doesn't even know that this is happening. And the other half that does know that it's happening they're absolutely panicking about it. What do you guys think about this in general?
I go back and forth on it, and you and I were texting about this yesterday. Like, I think if one of the components of the lawsuit is sellers shouldn't be responsible for paying both broker fees, right? Because that's part of what it's saying, right? Can it be argued that a buyer pays the broker fees? Because without the buyer bringing the money, the seller can't pay the fee, right? And so can it be argued that the buyer is essentially helping shoulder the costs and the fees associated with the real estate transaction?
I think one of the biggest problems that the DOJ, I want to say DOG like it's dog, has with this is that they feel like the consumer is not aware of what real estate agents get paid. I don't know that I feel that that's really true. I mean, it's on all of the settlement statements and closing disclosures and all that jazz. And yeah, we don't see that until the end of the buying and selling process when we actually basically get to the closing table. But like, I feel like real estate agents and real estate commissions have been so challenged over the last couple of years in this market that like everyone knows what a realtor gets paid, don't you think?
Well,
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason I always come back to like expectations, right? Like it sounds so trite, but here we are in a situation where disclosing everything up front through just something as simple as a net sheet takes away the ability to say like they weren't told about certain fees, right? Here it is, you've signed it, you've initialed it, you've whatever, it's going in your file. Like how can a seller say that they didn't know about a fee if we're setting proper expectations up front in writing as real estate agents?
I think the other stance that they're taking on this is, and this one I agree with, I will say, they're taking a stance against the agents that market and openly say and explain to their clients, hey, if you're a buyer, you get a real estate agent's representation for free. And I think that's a big issue that they see here. And I agree with that being an issue, in my opinion, because that isn't true. That commission is being paid by someone somehow, some way. So whether, X percent is the commission for the deal, whether the sellers raise the price of the property essentially by X percent because they say, in order to sell at this price and pay that commission, I have to be up here, or the buyer, they're paying for it. Like you do not get a real estate agent's representation for free. So that part I do agree with.
So I guess I have a couple questions. First of all, Facebook, please don't take my Facebook down for asking these questions again. B, where does it stop? Like, are the lenders going to get scrutinized too? Because their commissions are paid by the buyers, whether they say that or not. For the most part, they are. And we have loan types in this country that they don't have in other countries. On a VA loan, the buyer cannot pay a commission to the agent. So are we just supposed to work for all of our VA buyers at no charge? I don't think that's fair either, because they can't pay it.
I mean, I think if this changes anything, this will bring the eventual death of the buyer's agent. And that has truly been my opinion for several years. Because
the buyer is just going to go directly to the listing agent. And so we're going to see more dual agency and more transaction broker, because in Colorado, it's illegal to be a dual agent. So I think we'll see more transaction broker than we've ever seen before, which to me in turn means that the listing agent is now making more money than ever before. Right?
And still not advocating for either client or either person party to the contract, because they have no client.
Well, in dual agency and transaction broker, like I've never understood how anybody can sit here in all of these Facebook groups and say that they can provide dual agency and be cognizant of both clients and goal. No, you can't, because you already know what your sellers is because you've met with them. You know what your buyers is. So how can you possibly ever be representing both parties fairly?
You can't.
I think that opens up a way larger potential harm to the general public than this commission stuff does. And that's the other thing, is I feel like if the DOJ had wanted to make this case years ago, I think it would have been more applicable. It would have made more sense to me. And maybe it just took them a really long time to get it together. I don't know. But in the market that we're in now, negotiating on real estate commissions as the general public is alive and well. NAR said last year in 2020, 67+% of all real estate commissions were, finger quotes, discounted, right? So the public they're very well aware that these fees are negotiable, right? I think that's what the DOJ's problem is that they're fixed fees. And I don't believe that to be true right now. I mean, an agent definitely has the opportunity to say, no, I will not change my commission, but
the seller has the opportunity to interview millions of real estate agents to get the commission that they want to pay.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Correct. But I definitely think, even if whether or not you agree with it, you've got to stop saying like, hey, buyer, you get representation for free. Because that's a big part of the reason why this is happening. They really do believe that they're getting representation for free, and that's really not the case. Angela, I don't know, to answer your questions, I don't think that this stops. I think that they are very seriously concerned about whatever they're concerned about, and I think that this will bring changes. And I think that it's going to shake up the whole business.
Well, we've talked about the VA stuff before, right? Like with appraisals and how their appraisal process is more difficult. And while they're trying to protect the buyer in a market like this, is VA actually hurting their buyer? If something like this comes down and the buyer now has to pay for representation, then the VA is going to have to catch up to that. And the only feasible way to do that, in my opinion, on any loan type is to include a real estate agent's commission within the loan, and VA and FHA and all the other types of loans we have will eventually have to catch up to that sooner rather than later to protect their client, right? So that we get out of the TB and the transaction broker and the dual agency situations, which I think we will see lawsuits go through the roof.
Oh yeah.
If buyers feel like they have to go to the listing agent and be in a relationship with.
But here's a whole soapbox for me on that. It is legal.
It is legal. Absolutely.
First of all, everyone who listens to this needs to go to their own governing body of real estate and research what is legal and isn't legal in their own state. But that is perfectly legal. And I don't like the way that it carries such a stigma. I don't like the way that anytime I enter into a transaction brokerage relationship on a deal, I feel as if I'm doing something wrong because the agent community as a whole makes it seem like this shameful thing.
Mhm.
It is legal. And if you are aware and know how to conduct yourself correctly, there is absolutely nothing wrong with doing that as long as it's legal where you live. So I don't know that I think that that's like a horrible thing. Now, I think that if that becomes common practice, because this forces it to be so, there needs to be a dramatic increase in education because agents need to know how to conduct themselves in a transaction brokerage or a dual agency relationship. But there is nothing illegal about either of those. And in my opinion, what the DOJ is really saying here is they feel that that could be more appropriate.
What is to stop a listing agent, hypothetically, from basically working as a team, having another agent on the listing that basically would then act as an advocate for the buyer and they advocate for the seller on the listing side only, so that when people come to them directly, they don't have to worry about that piece?
So I do that all the time. That's what I've always done on my team. But the answer in Colorado's real estate law is if you are a team, it is still transaction brokerage. All of those contracts have to be written as transaction brokerage and they have to be disclosed. If you are, so like, let's say Angela and Jess are in the same brokerage, but they don't operate as a team, they run different businesses, then you may operate as listing agent, buyer's agent. If Angela and Jess are on a team together, Colorado state law says that that's still transaction brokerage.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's assumed that you're discussing the transaction, right? That's
also husband and wife businesses have to operate as transaction brokerages in that same case. So, I mean, I think that if this becomes commonplace, we might see rules and laws change around that, maybe.
So I'm going to ask a question because it was something that I was thinking about yesterday. So like one of the complaints that my sellers have is that they feel like the buyer's agent didn't do anything to get to the finish line. I know I have felt that way in many transactions. I know that you guys have felt that way in many transactions. And so my question is, as buyer's agents, if your buyer is now having to pay you for your services instead of it, coming from the seller, does that change the dynamic of the quality of work that you're giving?
It should.
I think the answer is yes. And so therefore, does it make a better real estate transaction for both the buyer and the seller?
It should. And I think that's the whole reason that they're going after this. What's interesting is, so I was at dinner on Sunday night with some good friends of mine who work for a national home builder. They were bringing up these lawsuits that they had read from other parts of the country. They didn't even know about the DOJ suit, right? Because they're not licensed real estate agents. They don't pay attention to NAR. But they were bringing up, it's not just NAR and it's not just the DOJ. Like this is becoming a very big thing really fast. There was a group of people that filed a class action lawsuit in Chicago about this. There was just a lawsuit that happened. It was Miami. I think it was somewhere in Florida. I'm pretty sure Miami, that was just filed about this, that made national news a couple of weeks ago. So this is real, is my point. Like this is a big thing, whether it's being brought from the DOJ back to, the National Association of Realtors, or whether it's being brought by individual buyers and sellers. This is a real issue this isn't going away. But so Chicago, what happened in Chicago was multiple homeowners filed a lawsuit against the governing board there because these homeowners alleged that they had to pad or increase the sales price of their properties in order to pay the buyer's agent commission. And they feel like a buyer should pay for their own representation. And what really blew my mind about this lawsuit, because the DOJ has never said it in these terms. And when I read that, I was like, holy shit, mind explode. These sellers said, how is it not a conflict of interest that I have to pay the buyer's agent?
But again, like I would argue all day long that without the buyer's money, you can't pay that fee. So they're both still shouldering the burden of paying their agents, right?
Right.
Because
let's be honest, they're just raising the price to pay it anyway.
So I think what would be, again, because we're living in these unprecedented markets, right? What would make sense would be if we can't say standard commissions against antitrust. If the typical commission that you see is X percent, if all housing cost went down by X percent, because then the seller is not having to pad or increase the price of their property by X percent. But that in this market will never happen. And it's only going to lead to sellers still having this high price that's X amount of dollars higher, and buyers now having to come out of pocket to pay for their representation.
Or they end up renting because they can't close the deal because they have no idea what to do because they're paralyzed because no one has prepared them for this.
Or nobody wants a buyer's agent. I wouldn't pay for one. Would you?
I mean, I'm paying
You know,
for it now.
all I can sit here and think is if you're a new agent or you're an agent who's thought about getting into real estate, or someone who's thought about getting into real estate, and you've talked to me in the last 12 to 18 months and my messaging to you has been, it's hard to get in real estate right now, and we're being attacked from all points. I'm not saying it to be a bitch. I'm saying it because the stuff that we're talking about today is very real and it's changing the face of real estate. And the people that have been in the industry for a long time, these are the conversations we're having because business is about to change. And the HGTV version that everybody has is changing every second of every day. And people don't want to hear that things are changing. Established agents, new agents, maybe agents, these are all real things that are attacking us from every perspective and the way that we're going to exist in this industry now.
Okay. Who pays the buyer's agent's commission? Is it the buyer? Is it the seller? Who pays it?
Typically the listing brokerage firm.
Right. But where does the money, does the money come from the buyer because they pay for the cost of the house plus whatever the real estate commission was? Or does the seller set a price and then they lose what the real estate commissions?
See, but I don't know. See, that's a hard one for me because to me, I price a house at fair market value. Outside of fees, outside of title fees, taxes, all the fees and commissions, fair market value is fair market value and what somebody is willing to pay.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're going to be technical about it, if you look at a settlement statement, the seller is paying the fees.
Yep. It's coming out of the net proceeds of the house.
But they wouldn't have the net proceeds if the buyer didn't have the money to buy the house. I will argue this all day long.
No, because I think it's both. That's what's so confusing. And I think that honestly, if you read this DOJ lawsuit stuff, the word that comes up over and over again is transparency, 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 transparency. It is transparent as freaking mud to us because we could spin it around both ways. So that's why they're going after the transparency to the public. But I'm telling you, so, there was a rule that was passed last year that said that websites are going to have to start displaying the buyer's agent commission. So you're going to go on Zillow and it's going to say the price of the house is $550 and the commission is $15,000.
Honestly, I have no problem with that as long as they also have to display all the bullshit fees that they're charging to people that they don't know about until they're under contract.
But I think that's part of what I think commissions are the easiest thing to come after. And those are the things that the general public talks about, right? The general public's not talking about title fees. The general public's not talking about their loan origination fees. The general public's not talking about
cost of appraisal.
Right. So I think commissions are the easiest thing to come after.
They're also the biggest.
Does the general public understand that the higher the price of your house, the higher your title insurance is going to. No, because no one gives a shit.
But title insurance is maybe $1,200, where a real estate commission could be $12,000.
I understand. I'm just saying though, like, we want to talk about transparency, then all of these fees need to be transparent.
Yeah. And then it no longer is just real estate fees have to be transparent. It should be then all the fees with anyone working under a DORA regulated industry should then be published as well. Because I'd like to know what my hairdresser's commission is then, because now all of a sudden that's relevant, right?
I'd like to know what my nail salon charges, because it changes every effing time I'm in there. So if we could start there, I'd appreciate it.
I'd like to know if there's taxes being paid on that is what I'd like to know.
Because I feel like the fees are built into the fair market value of every home. It has been our agents' biggest failure not explaining a property to buyers and sellers all along. Yeah, I definitely think this is probably the number one thing that real estate agents shy away from is transparency in their finger quotes fees, because those are difficult conversations to have, especially in this market. And especially with companies offering rebates and all kinds of things happening, right? I think this is why they're coming after it, because we have done a terrible job of explaining it.
Correct.
If you can't articulate your value to your client, that will be definitely a hard conversation to have. So a pretty easy way to figure this out quickly is to figure out what your value is and what your USP is, and start using that with your clients. Like if you don't believe that you're worth that, then why would your clients believe that you're worth that? I mean, it's pretty cut and dry first conversation I would be having at my brokerage. Like, how do we get around this? Well, how do I figure out what my value is? And if I'm not valuable, how do I get valuable?
So a couple months ago, we were having these really intense conversations on the show. You should go back and watch them if you didn't see them, about what the hell the value of a real estate agent is in this market right now. Because we know on both sides, and listen, I'm being honest. I say this stuff to my clients, totally honest, right? On the listing side, a monkey with one arm could put a property on the market and sell it probably with multiple offers for a great price and most likely get to the closing table. On the buying side, a monkey with, I guess you would have to have one arm to open a lockbox, but so a monkey with one arm could open the door for you, let you in to see the house. You're not doing any negotiation on the buying side, right? So if your value no longer is, I can make you this much money or I can save you this much money, what is your value? And we were having these super intense conversations here on the show about the fact that we are legal fiduciaries. We act as attorneys without a license, advising our clients through the legalities of buying and selling a home. And I think that's the other number one thing that real estate agents have never done well, is explaining what you actually want a realtor for. You don't go to court when you're in trouble and say, I'll just hire Aunt Sally because she just got her law license yesterday. She's never been in court before, but whatever, she'll probably take care of me. We sell ourselves to the general public as salespeople. We're not doing any selling on either side in this market. So what are we actually doing? And I think we need to go back to the other benefits. If I was a buyer's agent and I was competing against this happening right now, well, why would I pay you if I have to pay you out of pocket? If the seller no longer pays your real estate commission and I have to pay you a 5-figure number, why would I pay you that? We have to get better at articulating the value that we have in, well, if you go straight to the listing agent, this could happen. You could get sued. You could get in trouble for this. You could get screwed over this way. You could land in court. There's a lot more value than just I make you money or I save you money.
And let's not forget, that's probably still something that we could write into a contract, even though as a buyer's agent, it might show that you're being paid by the buyer. That doesn't mean that you have to be. That means that you still have to negotiate for your money, just like you did before. That's really all this is about. Like, if you can't negotiate and you can't write that in and get it accepted, well, maybe that's on you to not have your buyer pay.
I always find it funny when we say, when there's the agents out there who have a hard time talking about money, you're dealing with money.
That's their whole job.
That's literally your entire job, is to deal with someone's money. So if you can't comfortably talk about money, we got a bigger issue, because that's literally your job, is to talk about money.
Yeah.
It's
I don't
true.
know. I think that it will do some good for our industry if it does happen. You know, in that, I think that it will probably get rid of some agents that are not as serious, I guess, that are more like the fair weather agents. But I think that for the rest of us, I don't know that it's going to affect us personally, because we've been doing things the same way the entire time. I mean, we understand that everything's a negotiation, so I'm not really that super worried about it. I think that we'll figure it out. We always do.
I think that everyone should focus on listings. Personally, I do think that this brings a lot of change for buyers agents. Don't you think?
Yeah.
Potentially?
I mean, when you think about the process, that's one that's easy to replicate, like without a real person, right? It's easy to be replaced on the buyer agent side. Not so easy on the listing agent side, in my opinion. So that's a great way for you to stand out on the listing side. Personally.
Yeah, no, it's, do you think this will pass? I do. I mean, in any other country in the world, if you want to buy a property and you want to hire an agent, you pay your own agent. It's also crazy to me how much I feel like, obviously things are compressing on the agent side. There's a lot happening, but it's crazy to me how much is compressing on the public side also. I mean, you've got inflation skyrocketing. You've got cost of properties higher than they've ever been in United States history. I just read yesterday that they're predicting another 12 to 22% increase next year.
You have
Right?
wages that aren't going up with the cost of living.
Yep. You have all of these things compressing down on them. And what I'm not really sure that the DOJ is getting right now, like I said, I wish that they would think about bringing this suit if they feel they need to in a different time. Because if you think about what's happening, sellers are equity rich, and all this will do is continue to compress down on buyers that almost have an impossible time of buying as is. And this is just going to make it harder for them, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was hard, you know, for my clientele when all of a sudden the sellers were no longer, you know, willing to pay closing costs on their behalf. And then the market changed that way. So now it was harder for buyers. They had to come up with a little bit more money or figure out how to roll it into their loan. But if they now have to pay commissions as well, you know, upfront or otherwise, then I'm sure we'll figure it out. But yeah, it's going to totally change how we as agents market to clients and what clients we choose to work with, you know, in the future, and how we market ourselves. But I feel like we're going to figure it out.
I mean, now they don't have to, they've got to come up with down payment, closing costs, above asking, appraisal gap, real estate agent commission.
Yeah.
It's just not sustainable. Like, it's just not. And all it's going to do is prevent home ownership from happening. All it's going to do is continue to have rents skyrocket. We're creating an issue, another issue on top of the issues we already have. Like, we're already in a housing crisis, right?
And I think that the public sees this as black and white, what it is, and they're seeing it as, I could save money. But what they're not seeing is potentially, I actually have to have more money, and the sellers that are already equity rich and gentrifying the neighborhoods and bringing the pricing way up are just making more money now.
Or are they? Because maybe buyers are like, I'm not doing this anymore. So instead of sellers getting 20, 30 offers, they're getting an offer because they have one buyer out of those 20 or 30 who can afford their down payment, who can afford their closing costs, and who can afford to take on a house that needs work, but they can't afford the agent to help them get to the finish line. So maybe this is going to end up costing the sellers money too, right? Like most people, if you said, if you paid 10, you could make 50, everybody's going to raise their hand and say, absolutely. So if you look at it from that perspective too, like it could still end up costing the sellers money.
So one thing I'm not really clear on, to be honest, and if anyone's watching or listening and knows the answer to this, I would love if you would shout it out in the chat box.
Our people are very quiet today. I feel like they're very intimidated by our conversation.
I'm having a hard time. I would just looked at the clock and I was like, shit, we have 30 more minutes to talk because this is heavy. So I'm not very clear on what this ruling would actually mean. I'm not clear on whether it would mean it's illegal. A seller absolutely in no case whatsoever cannot pay a buyer's agent's commission, or if it just means there's more transparency about it and the community is now made epically aware that, right, that the buyer should pay their own commission. Those lawsuits from Chicago, which I'll throw up in the chat box if you guys want to read them, those to me say illegal. Seller cannot pay a buyer's agent's commission. Do you know, Jess, like, how do you think that that's going to happen?
My opinion is that it's just more transparency. Like, I don't think that, because again, I don't think that they can say to a seller, like, you can't do something. It's my money. I'll do what I want.
They can tell you whether or not you can pay your commission to your client.
Right. Like, so I don't think it's going to come down to it's illegal. I think or it's whatever. I think it's going to come down to, it just absolutely has to be completely spelled out in black and white for the general public to see anywhere, at any time, in any place.
I would hope that that's what it is, but I don't know. Here's where I'm going to get my Facebook page taken down again. I think that this is probably a political issue. And it's probably one that we're going to have to deal with until the next election. Like it or not, we previously had a president that was pretty interested and, saturated in the real estate world. So he was protecting agents.
So hang on a second. I got to pause there. That's true, first of all. And this is not about politics. But if you go and research what our prior administration wanted to do with the Dodd-Frank laws and repealing all of this stuff, including appraisal oversights and appraisal overlays and lending overlays and all that, that is true. Continue. It's not about it's true.
I know it's true.
Dodd-Frank, DODD Frank, is the act that they were working on trying to repeal that basically would fix all of our problems in the industry. So that is actually true, but not about.
So I'll switch from just truth to my opinion. My opinion is that our current administration is not as focused on that and is more focused on creating a more dependent system. And by doing this, it's going to create a lot fewer buyers and a lot more renters and people that are more dependent. And I think that that is probably partially the goal. And I don't know why that is, but maybe it's a getting us to comply type of thing. And they're a lot smarter than a lot of us give them credit for. I think that there's definitely an agenda, but I don't know exactly what it is or why it is. But I hope that people are watching and understanding what's really happening. And maybe they'll open their eyes a little bit more when these kind of decisions are made, even though they're not directly affecting them personally. They don't think it probably is. It's going to be a trickle down effect.
I'm going to read this from this lawsuit. This is in the New York Times. Home buyers in many parts of the country are facing a strong seller's market. A lack of houses for sale is pushing up pricing, impeding first-time and lower-income buyers, even as mortgage rates remain low. In an order denying requests by the Real Estate Association, so NAR, Judge Andrea R. Wood, so this is in Chicago. Apparently, there's another set of these lawsuits happening in Missouri right now. The judge said that the plaintiffs or the sellers would have paid substantially lower commissions if not for the rules established by the Realtors Association and followed by the brokers. The suit takes aim at the way that brokers who represent home buyers are paid. Typically, people seeking to sell their home agree to pay a listing agent a commission, let's call it 5% of the sale. The seller agrees that the listing agent will offer to split the commission, 2.5% share to each agent. Home buyers pay nothing directly to their own agent and may believe that they are paying no commission because, according to the lawsuit, the Realtor Association allows buyers' agents to tell clients that their services are free. In a competitive market, the seller would pay nothing to the buyer's broker, who would be paid instead by the buyer, and the commission paid by the seller would be set at a level to compensate the selling broker only. Okay, so I do think that we have got to stop telling people that real estate commissions are free.
Mm-hmm.
That I agree with 100%. It's bullshit. It's not true. It's never been true. It's a shitty marketing tactic. I've used it. Everyone's used it in order to grab buyers, right? Like we do have to stop doing that. I just think.
What do you say? What do you say when that comes up?
How do you get paid?
Yeah, when somebody is like, well, how do you get paid?
I mean, basically it's rolled into the price that you're paying for the house. That's the truth. We have to tell the truth. The problem is, I think that they're bringing, again, this lawsuit at the incorrect market timing, because in a softer market, if sellers were able to retain that whatever percentage of real estate commission, they could use it to negotiate down the price of the house and actually save themselves and buyers money. In this market right now, I don't think when they say this, I'm going to reread it again. In a competitive market, the seller would pay nothing to the buyer broker. The buyer broker would be paid instead by the buyer, and the commission paid by the seller would be set at a level to compensate the selling broker only. But the first line of the article says, home buyers in many parts of the country are facing a strong seller's market, a lack of homes for sales pushing up pricing, impeding first-time home buyers and lower income buyers. It's like they don't get that they go together. It's like they don't get that we're saying we have a worldwide housing crisis with people who do not have enough money to buy houses. So let's take more money and put it on the buyer's side.
Yep. And I think one of the other key components here is competitive, right? Like that's one of the things that they keep saying, competitive. Like, have I had transactions this year where the buyer's agent negated their commission? I absolutely have. And it's made their offer more competitive, and my sellers have been very happy. With that said, this shit is not going to last forever, you guys.
Yeah.
And so if we're filing lawsuits based on a current market, are all of these, laws and stuff going to stand when we're in a buyer heavy market and the seller now has to pay a buyer's agent in order to get their house freaking sold? Like, where does it end? Like Angela said earlier, where does it end?
I mean, do we not remember what is the number one thing that builders do when the market gets soft? Realtor commission goes way up. 4%, 5%, 6%. I've been paid 7% and put on a fucking cruise ship by builders before repeatedly, right? That's the number. What do you do when you can't get a listing sold? Agent bonus, right? Like the number one thing that everyone goes back to, including sellers who are now saying that they're being screwed over by the buyer's agent. That's the number one thing that they always go back to. I mean, during the downturn and recession times, like agents would be like, I'll pay you $500,000 to sell my $600,000 house. I don't give a shit. Just get rid of it. Like it makes no sense.
But that's what I think, like, that's my biggest fear is like, if we're making decisions based on the market that we have found ourselves in the last 24 to 36 months, this market, like we all know the market ebbs and flows. It's going to change. And then what?
I think they're trying to force a buyer's market. I think they're trying to force unrest in the market. I think they're trying to slow down real estate growth for some reason.
But this has been going on since
huh?
Right? This has been going on since, this has been a conversation since even before the recession.
Yeah. I just don't understand why we can't just have a healthy, balanced market. Why we have to like poke the bear, right? Like, why do we have to do that shit? Like, why as a government and a community, why do we have to do that?
But I think it's the consumer that's poking the bear, because the consumer is so consumed with what they're paying a real estate agent right now. That's who's rattling the cage.
And don't hire a real estate agent. Go it yourself and lose 20% when you could have paid 6%. I mean,
that's not, because you still have options.
Right. You don't have to pay a realtor. You can do it yourself and lose a whole bunch of money. It's up to you. But that's the problem. I think that these lawsuits are based on hypothetical numbers, right? I understand that they're like, okay, I paid an agent X. Yes, you paid an agent X and you agreed to it in writing. hopefully that's in your contract. However, you can't be mad that your house sold for 600 grand when without that agent, it might have only sold for 500 grand. So hypothetically, you're not losing or gaining anything. You have no idea what it would have done without your agent.
That's just it. We're talking about a number that's not even real.
Right.
We have no idea what said number is. And like I said earlier, if you don't like what an agent charges or they won't negotiate their commission, here in Colorado, you got 40,000 more of us to go through. Go find
Somebody
one.
will do it for cheaper or differently.
And
Absolutely.
again, NAR said last year 67+% of all real estate commissions nationwide were finger quotes discounted. Okay. So
Discounted for what?
discounting, negotiating
Exactly.
on these untransparent fees is alive and well. It's happening the majority of the time. I just want to know, the more that I think about it, whether they're saying it's going to become illegal or whether they're just saying, I don't really get what they're saying. Like there would have to, what's the ruling? There would have to be.
I don't understand what the harm is to the seller, because typically the price of the house will be raised to compensate for that amount of money. So what they're doing is they're going to basically, if in my market, it's VA heavy. Okay. So if they do that here and they're not allowed to pay the commission, they're going to get rid of 90% of the base of people that are looking to purchase the home. So wouldn't it be a seller's advantage to offer a higher commission amount and have X amount of dollars paid to the buyer's agent, even way more than what they would be paying? Wouldn't they then get more action on their property and hypothetically get higher offers because of it, because they're standing out now? And how is that different from what we're doing now?
If they don't make it illegal. I don't understand, to be very honest, why the DOJ would, like, just thinking about it impartially, like why would they come in, spend all this time and money hot and heavy if they don't intend to make it illegal though? Like, what is it that they're after is what I don't understand.
But like, I always like, it's my money. If I want to pay a buyer's agent, who are you to tell me I can't?
Well, the SEC tells financial contractors how they're allowed to work. You know, I mean, this is the other point that the DOJ is making. We are the highest income earning, untransparent and unregulated industry in the world. Insurance agents have rules about commissions. Mortgage lenders have rules about commissions. Title has rules about what they're allowed to earn and when. Everyone does. We are the only industry on the planet that is not regulated financially, that doesn't have a clear and transparent fee sheet that has to be disclosed and provided to the public. So again, being impartial, like I can kind of see why they're coming from it.
I mean, so what does it end up looking like? Is it an additional document that comes with the closing or the contract to buy and sell that says, like you would have on a contract for a builder, but we don't see what the builder's getting paid. We just get to see what the buyer side agent gets paid on there. You know,
But
like
see,
how
then are we
we
held to that? So
Right.
here's my question, not to interrupt you, but like, then my question is, how many times have a seller given you the wrong payoff information and it's been
Right.
wildly different than what it actually is? So then are we held to this other number because the seller didn't give us the right information and our numbers are all off and skewed now?
or there's a lien on the property, a massive one.
I'm trying to read through this, and I'm reading on the fly, obviously, but this article from CNN Business says the DOJ's antitrust division, sorry, I just got a pop up. The DOJ's antitrust division simultaneously filed a proposed settlement that requires NAR to repeal and modify its rules. Those changes, including more disclosure around buyer broker fees, are expected to increase competition among brokers and lower the fees paid by home buyers and sellers. If approved, the Justice Department said the settlement would enhance competition in the real estate market, resulting in more choice and better service for consumers, as well as boosting innovation in the industry. But I don't see, it looks like more transparency. I'm not 100%.
I mean,
That's
I'm
all it
not
is.
opposed to transparency. I'm opposed to the belief that getting rid of it or forcing someone to not be able to pay it or forcing another party to pay it or not getting paid at all is going to help advocate for either party.
So then the next lawsuit that they're going to bring is like, oh, we need more transparency around what dual agency means because we just forced you all into dual agency all the time.
I feel like this is going to be like at closing where our clients have to sign the same fucking paper 900 times with different verbiage that's the same because somebody couldn't figure it out up front. Are these people not signing a buyer's agency up front like they're supposed to that says that their commission will either be paid by them or by the seller or by who and how much that's going to be up to a percentage of? And on the listing side, are these sellers not signing that? How much more disclosure is needed, I guess?
You know what it comes down to for me? Y'all don't read the fucking paperwork.
Right.
And we're the ones getting punished for it. And that is the truth. Like whether anybody wants to hear it or not, you know as well as I know, our sellers and our buyers don't sit there and read all of their contracts. We can go through it with them. We can send them all of the information. We can sit on the phone with them. All of a sudden, they all have fucking amnesia and they don't remember anything we told them.
Okay, so this one's interesting though, because this makes sense to me. So hang on. So this is Washington Post. Sellers must negotiate their commission with their agent before entering into a sale, determining how much of a commission to offer their listing agent and their buyer's agent. They therefore know how much will be paid at the closing table from proceeds of the sale. Buyers who in effect pay those commissions because they're the ones making the purchase, including those fees, typically do not know how much either their agent or the listing agent will be paid and have no opportunity to negotiate on those fees.
That's fair.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Do they know up front how much is going to be tacked onto the back of their loan for closing fees? Because that'd be my next question.
Yeah, they should. Absolutely.
Like, how much is your VA funding fee that you're going to tack onto the back?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, they know that and they know what their closing costs are. They also have the opportunity to go and negotiate with different lenders to get lower fees. So I think what they're saying is sellers get to negotiate, buyers don't, I guess, on the fees.
So do they get to negotiate with a title company on the title fees up front?
No.
No. They get to choose the title company. So how would this be different than the document that they sign with the lender that says, hey, here's an overview of what we think you're going to be paying. And 3 days before closing, we're going to have to give you another one that says, this is exactly what you're paying. You know what I mean? Like, are we going to have to do that kind of thing?
I mean, the DOJ has been very, very, very clear on saying they believe that real estate agents are overpaid. In the United States of America, we make an absolutely astounding amount of money compared to agents in other countries. And they believe that we need more regulation, more disclosure, and more transparency. So in my opinion, the DOJ is saying they believe we're overpaid and they want the general public to be able to negotiate down those fees for themselves.
I don't understand how that's different from what we're currently doing because everything is negotiated. Everything.
Well, here's my answer to that though. Honestly, no one negotiates their buyer's agent commission because it's free.
So I would disagree with that, at least in my market, because we have a lot of people that are saying, I'm going to work with this buyer's agent because they're giving me half their commission back in blah, blah, blah. Right. So they are negotiating on some level.
I think that's what they want. The whole thing is wild. This is what I would say personally. I feel like agents need to either brush off or sharpen their listing agent skills, because I do think that this will affect the buyer's agent community big time. And I also think that we have got to stop saying that it's free. And I also think that we have got to get right about what our value is and why we get paid what we get paid.
What do you think about this verbiage?
Free?
What about this verbiage? If instead of saying it's free to you, what about my commissions are paid at no charge to you?
Up front.
It's not at no charge to you because you're paying for it when you buy the house.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're saying.
But
you've got to be able to
say by the seller. It can't be both ways. It can't be like it's coming out of the seller's bottom line and the buyer's bottom line. It's just a cost of doing the transaction, just like the loan will be for the buyer, just like the title fees will be for the buyer and seller. I mean,
I mean, inherently, the problem is that a bunch of people who don't sell real estate are the ones making these decisions that don't
I
understand
agree
the
with that.
process and don't understand anything, and that's inherently what it all comes down to, right?
Right.
I just
Well,
think
I hope that for their sake, they all list their houses with an agent really quickly before they piss all of them off, and no one will list their houses. So
I just think it's really abhorrent that they're doing it now, because I think it's the worst time in history to put more on a buyer's plate. They don't have it. They can't do it. It's awful. If you've had in the last 2 years, like raise your hand, a conversation where you've had to tell people you cannot afford to buy, it's horrific. And then you're supposed to say to them, oh, and by the way, you're going to have to pay me now too.
yeah, they're making it a hell of a lot easier for those big corporations who they probably are investing with to come in and buy those houses in cash without you, so that you can't buy them.
I mean, does anybody, this is a joke, you guys. I hope that you laugh when I say this. Does anybody now find it hilariously funny that the average real estate commission in the United States is just about $15, and that's what our current administration wants to give everyone as a home buying credit? Here you go. Here's your $15,000 credit. Pay your real estate agent.
I mean,
On that note,
It's mind blowing. I mean, it's really, this is rough stuff. But we have to be aware of it. We need to be talking about it. We need to be changing our messaging, right? Like,
I think it's a current shit show. And if we want to change it or make any kind of changes, you probably want to get involved with your realtor association and RPAC, because it's probably now more than ever pretty important. So when they send those things out about like, hey, this is coming down the pike, like you might want to like keep an eye on this and help us vote for this, maybe pay attention to that, because it will affect you, whether you like it or not. And political or not, like this is always going to come up, you know, when it comes to this kind of thing. Like I vote the way I vote to protect my job and make things easier on my fellow agents.
I don't disagree with more regulations. I want to go back to that whole, we're the only unregulated industry in the whole world at this point almost.
We are regulated.
We are, but not enough.
to an extent.
Listen, but it shouldn't just be about commissions. It needs to be about policing the things that are wrong. It needs to be about going after things that are unethical and incorrect. There is so much more here that's going on than just what people are getting paid. Like if you're going to regulate and crack down on an industry, regulate and crack down on all of it.
Well, I think it's a, hey, look over here. Look at all this crazy stuff that's going on. Don't look over here while this is happening. Like, I think that it's like hiding something. You know what I mean? Like, I really do think that there's a big issue with investors in the marketplaces. And I would have thought that the government would have tried to help buyers compete. But this is going to make it even harder if they do it that way. I don't disagree that, you know, just like having some transparency is best. I don't care about that. I think that they will basically do away with certain loan types and people will be forced to rent. And
that's not what's going to happen. They'll do away with the buyer's agent. There won't be a buyer's agent anymore. States that have to, other states will have to implement dual agency or transaction brokerage because they will have to, because no one will use a buyer's agent. In my opinion, at least, that's what will happen. Kelly says, I believe commission is built into the purchase price. Buyers and sellers contribute equally. Buyers from the purchase price, sellers from equity.
Yep.
Which we agree with, but I mean, I think the issue is the buyer's agent or the buyer isn't able to negotiate their commission that they're supposedly paying, right? That's inherently what they're saying.
I think everyone will go directly to the listing agent.
Mm-hmm. I mean, they're trying to now.
Mm-hmm. They have been for a long time.
Well, they have been for a long time because in this market, they feel like going directly to the listing agent gets them some sort of magical deal, which, like Lindsay was saying earlier, doesn't. It just puts more money in the seller's pocket.
Right. And
okay, I know we're over time, but now like my wheels keep turning. So what happens when, okay, take the buyer's agent commission off the table, right? So let's say that you charge 6%, not standard. I'm not violating antitrust.
Hypothetically speaking.
Okay, so you charge 6%. Now this has passed. We're living in a world where whatever, sellers aren't allowed to pay a buyer's agent commission, or it doesn't happen very frequently. So now the commission is 3%. No longer is it, I pulled a buyer off of a sign call, I can keep the whole 6% and work both sides legally, by the way, again, there's only 3% on the table. How does that change things for you as a listing agent?
You get to do twice the amount of work for one of the halves of the contract. Here's what I see happening. I see people still having their advocate as their buyer's agent, and then us as listing agents paying a referral fee to the buyer's agent of, say, I don't know, hypothetically 3%. I mean,
Smart. That's actually really smart.
I'm not as dumb as I look.
But can you technically do that then? Because the other agent is now interfering with a contract that they're not actually a party to.
As long as you have a disclosure in your contract, a secondary document, I'm sure, that says this person is responsible for X, this person is responsible for X, just like they're signing now, but it's yet another ancillary document that they have to sign for that amount of.
To me, this just creates more confusion in the marketplace for a buyer or a seller. That's all it does.
I mean, I do think logically
anybody, in my opinion.
No, it isn't. This is the wrong time. If you went to a buyer legitimately in this market and you said, do you want representation or do you want to add another 5-figure dollar amount to what's already on your plate having to buy? No one is going to do that. I mean, a select few will, because they'll see the value in it. But that's like my whole point is you better get ready to prove your value. And your value right now cannot be like, oh, I'll save you $10,000. I'll make you back in negotiations what you're paying. And it's not going to happen. But I mean, I just think we also better learn how to do dual agency better.
Mm-hmm. I think this is going to separate the men from the boys, as they say. I think it's going to make the cream rise to the top, and it's going to make it even harder for the subpar or agents that have no compelling value to compete. And I think that we're going to see them changing careers very quickly.
And this is why I keep saying getting your license right now is very difficult. It's not because I'm being an asshole.
I think you're going to see a lot of agents put their license like on ice or have it as inactive or whatever. And you're going to have a whole bunch of referral agents out there probably that pop up every once in a while.
This is intense, you guys. Like, this to me is more intense than whatever Big Z and OD and all those other companies are doing. This is intense to me.
Well, who do you think's driving this though?
I wonder about that too, for sure. I mean,
I think that this will inevitably be the death of the iBuyer too, because that's where the iBuyer makes their money back, is on the buyer agent side, right? So what does that look like for them, really?
Well, they're going to offer a lot less
properties and then making it up on the buy side, while they're
going to offer a lot less to get their money. Yeah,
it'll be interesting. Or this will just end up being something that sits on the back burner forever, and we're talking about it again in 8 years when it resurfaces.
I feel like real estate is a really fucked up snow globe, and every time you get your stuff like straight and normal, something shakes it, and you're like, dear God, what's gonna fall from the sky today? Right? This is intense. All we can do is talk about it, but like, I for sure, if you take one thing away from this year, it's go figure out what your value is aside from money, because money doesn't mean shit to anyone right now. And then work on your listing skills, right?
Better diversify. We tell you to do that all the time. Don't put all your shit in one basket. Better figure that out.
Whew.
On that note, I'm going to go work on my flip.
We had a big crowd watching this whole time, so that was fun that you guys hung with us. I posted a couple articles in the chat box, and we will see you guys on Tuesday next week. Mwah.
Bye.